Hey, I'm just curious. Let me know if you can hear this, right? Oh, maybe not. Okay.
The Sport Buffet with Matt West and AC the Iceman.
We got the Alaska lookalike contest going on outside. Why are you in a parka?
G-string is the pure golf.
I
have a man crush on Tom Brady. I'm betting my underwear on the East.
That's the Iceman and West.
I got nice calves too over here. Leave them alone. Isn't that a cookie?
Let me be the voice of reason here. I have won the Nigerian lottery.
We have Matt West.
As he pulled the text and went to the bathroom.
We have the Iceman.
Because fish have gills.
Why don't you join us and feast at the buffet by calling 888-808-5658. That's 888-808-5658. And now we open the buffet. Here's Matt West.
Yes, good afternoon and welcome back into the Sport Buffet. I am your host, AC the Iceman. Matt West has decided to take the day off, but don't worry, we trudge on. We are here live on aristocratsportsnet.com, coming to you, live streaming also on YouTube as well. Super excited to get this show back up and running again. I got the owner of Aristocrat Sportsnet joining me in studio today. Actually, he's joining me by phone. I'm sorry. He wasn't able to make it to the studio, but we're still happy to have him. And he's going to talk a little bit of sports with us for the next hour. And that man is John Sirocco. John, how are you today?
I am very well. Thank you so much for having me on the show, Aaron. Thank you, Matt, for letting me fill in for you today. And hopefully I won't completely mess it up for you guys.
Oh, no, not a problem. That's the beautiful thing about sports radio is it's all opinion. So is it really ever wrong?
Yes, there are wrong opinions.
Just not ours, right?
That's correct.
Well, that's good. I know that you did the Sal and John show last night. I know it actually was caught by a lot of people, and it's catching a big following, and we're really excited to hopefully follow up with a good Sport Buffet show and get the fans and some listeners alike and start getting a following on both sports talk radio shows and eventually get some more shows here on this brand new sports station. What are your thoughts on the excitement that's been building from Aristocrat Sportsnet? That
is the goal. Sal is a character from New York, so I think a lot of people can take to that and laugh at him rather than laugh with him. But whatever the case may be, the Sport Buffet, this is their second show on the Aristocrat Sportsnet, aristocratsportsnet.com. Yesterday was an awesome show. If you guys didn't catch it, there's a podcast section on the website. You can catch any show from that week. And if you want to catch any show from before that, just contact me, aristocratsportsnet@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to get that show to you. But, man, I'm really excited. We definitely have some things in the works right now. Got some more shows lining up. And, in the next 2 weeks, we should have a full lineup of shows. So 24 hours a day, hopefully. There's always something going to be happening at aristocratsportsnet.com.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm definitely excited. Like I said, we're definitely excited to be a part of it. And living here in Las Vegas, let's just dive right into our first topic. And it's kind of a bittersweet, somber topic, especially for this city. There's a little bit of a cloud. If you haven't heard by now, UNLV basketball legend Jerry Tarkanian has passed away at 84. I talked to a few people this morning on my travels, and UNLV basketball is not what it used to be, but the fans still had that passion, that fire, those amazing moments to hold on to, and Tarkanian was the guy who brought that. And it's really sad to see this city kind of go through their day, missing one of their icons. And I know that growing up watching college basketball, I caught the tail end of his run at UNLV, especially against the game against Duke. That's now become synonymous with one of the greatest college basketball games of all time in the '91 championship. What were your early thoughts to hearing Tarkanian, the news about him passing away?
Yeah, and I want to be completely honest about this. When I first heard the news, and I was kind of upset about it because it's coming, obviously right off the heels of the death of Dean Smith. And I just feel like Tarkanian might not get the love and press that he deserves because of what the guy accomplished during his career. Like, he is obviously one of the best NCAA basketball coaches that ever lived. But, when you die 2 days after maybe the greatest NCAA coach, it might diminish what he did. And people that might not be aware of his career, they might not be as well informed with people. Just hope that is not the case.
Right. Yeah. It's almost kind of like you hate to say it, but, for your legacy to be remembered, you kind of passed away at the wrong time. I mean, you can't really tell anybody, hey, don't die today. But, that's not the way life works. But I'll tell you what, Tark the Shark, 1990-91, 2 straight NCAA championship game appearances, winning one, losing one, both, at the hands of Duke. We don't really know what the cause of death is. 84 years old, it doesn't really open up a lot of doors. And I'm not thinking there was some foul play here, but the running Rebels, from let's say the mid 80s to the early 90s were some of the greatest games you could see. You had Stacey Augmon, Larry Johnson, guys like that, who just created such a buzz in the arena, almost to the same comparison of the Fab Five of Michigan and teams like that. Larry Bird versus Magic. This man was to college basketball almost exactly what we're talking about Dean Smith. He was a fierce competitor, but he cared about the kids. He wasn't worried about filling up stat sheets. He was worried about growing people, growing athletes, growing men, and getting them prepared for the world, whether it be the NBA or whether it be, the workforce. But, boy, I'll tell you what, his teams could score. I was reading a stat that they 12 consecutive games of at least 100 points. That does not happen even in today's college basketball.
No, it doesn't even come close to happening in today's college basketball. And to kind of piggyback off what you were saying about how the most important possibly thing to him about what's maybe growing the players and making sure they were successful off the basketball court, how different is that in today's, one and done college basketball world where you have guys like Calipari who are, just basically going to sell their soul for the best high school basketball players in the country, know that they're only going to use them for a year and then kind of recycle and do the same thing the next year.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Another thing, with Tarkanian, especially for the people of the NCAA who believe that the NCAA is a crook, out to exploit kids. He was very much an outspoken member of that community that maintained that the NCAA was unfairly and unevenly investigating, kids on permissible benefits. He was always a very outspoken mouthpiece against the NCAA in those, in those topics and in those forums. And I think that, if that's your belief that the NCAA is, using exploitation in these kids, and you're talking about pay for play, talking about paying these athletes, I think that, that community just lost a really, really, really big mouthpiece in their family.
Definitely. And, I just want to kind of make the equation that can hit home, especially for you and me, as both of us are UCF Knights. Tarkanian was kind of the UNLV what George O'Leary is to UCF Knights. He took over the program, I think it was 7 or 8 years after they became D1 eligible. Took them to their first Final Four in 1977, which was, I'm sorry. He took them to their first Final Four after they were about 7 or 8 years into D1 play. And so he kind of built the program from the ground up and sustained that success. As like you said, they were a powerhouse throughout the late 70s, throughout the 80s, and obviously the early 90s when they won their championship. This guy, he definitely laid the groundwork for what was a mega power in college basketball for quite a while.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a perfect example of a man who stepped into, a less than ideal situation and basically, worked as hard as he could and said, you know what, we're going to be a good basketball team, but we're also going to be good men on the floor. And obviously he had his transgressions at Long Beach State, with 55 vacated wins, et cetera. This, he's not without trouble past, but who isn't, nowadays? And that's But I would say that the things that we try to criticize Jerry Tarkanian on are very minimal in my eyes. And I believe that even though Dean Smith did pass away just recently, I do believe Tark the Shark should get his due when it comes to remembering, a legend who just recently passed away.
Yes, and let's not forget the Shark is a member of the Basketball Hall of Fame. So his in the basketball community, in the basketball world, his accomplishments are well known.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely a sad day in Las Vegas and a sad day in college basketball. So I just want to say you rest in peace to Tarkanian. I know he's up in heaven chewing on his towel.
I will drink to that. And I just want to ask you, since you are actually in the heartland of Tarkland, what's the feel in Vegas today? Once this news dropped.
Like I said, when I was earlier, out talking to people, you hear it on the news. I was out getting oil change on my car and sitting in the lobby watching the, kind of the montage that ESPN had going on. And, it's one of it's one of mixed emotion. When somebody dies, obviously it's a sad time in the world, especially someone of great importance in the sports world in Las Vegas. However, I think it's actually kind of a good thing if you look at it, from a different perspective, because it's you kind of forget about Tarkanian because it's been so long since he had was on the bench at UNLV. But when somebody like that passes away, Dean Smith, you look at Tarkanian, you look at guys like that, when it is their time to pass away, that's the time where you take a few days to remember all the good things that they brought you. And I think that actually is kind of the silver lining in a death of someone of great magnitude. It kind of brings back the memories that maybe you had, but we're storing a little bit farther back in your brain. And now with the situation that has come up today, you're able to bring those happy memories, 2 straight NCAA championship games, 1 NCAA title, playing some of the greatest games of all time, being such an up-tempo offense. You have the visuals of Tarkanian sitting on the sidelines, chewing his towel, getting in the ref's face, how much animosity he coached with, but also, the good things that he did for UNLV, the good things he did for Las Vegas afterwards, when he was retired, the things he did for this community, building rec centers. He has a school named after him. He has a highway named after him. So clearly, I think the memory will still live on, but it's good for a couple of days in the quote unquote grieving process to remember all of the good things and remind Las Vegans of how much this guy meant to your community.
Yep, I think that's very well put. And, I'm just going to reiterate what you said a few minutes ago. I'm a 30-year-old guy. So when UNLV was, in its heyday, they were the earliest college basketball memories that I have of when I really started getting into the game. And so, I mean, at least for that, he's always going to be etched in my memory because his teams kind of introduced me to college basketball.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And like I'd say, I'd like to transition from this topic by saying rest in peace to Jerry Tarkanian, dead at 84. And we will miss you, especially here in Las Vegas. But we're going to stay in Las Vegas. And I'd like to also say congratulations to the Las Vegas Little League team, as they have now de facto become U.S. champions of the 2014 Little League World Series. I'm sure it's not the way that they planned it, but I guess, for lack of a better word, they can't take it away from you now unless you're found guilty of some of the similar violations. Now, let's talk about this. I'd like to say that it's so rampant in Little League Baseball, and maybe it is, but, it's one of those things similar along the lines with the Patriots. It's only the cheating to the person who potentially gets caught. And this Jackie Robinson Little League story about, bringing in kids from, boundaries that weren't defined by Jackie Robinson Little League. What are your initial thoughts on that? I know that it's kind of a weird situation, and it's not the first time we've had controversy in Little League, but it's definitely the first time in my recollection that we've had controversy surrounding, neighborhoods that kids live in.
Yeah, and when I first heard about this story, I actually was reading articles on the internet, going through my daily news, and So when I saw the headline that Little League World Series team stripped the title, I was like, my initial thoughts were, okay, they probably had some kids playing over, they were probably well older than what the rules regulate and whatever. And then I kind of read more into it and realized that they were just bringing, all the all-star kids from the neighboring territories around. Yeah, it's definitely against the rules. I think if you break the rules, it's cheating no matter what. That's kind of, my take on the Patriots situation. That's how I equate it. People think that, I'm not going off topic just for 1 second here, but like Deflategate, like some people say it's not cheating because deflating balls is not cheating. Well, no, that might be correct, but having a ball under what the regulated rule is, if you break the rules, so that's where I'm going to go back to here. If these kids are not geographically located where they're specified to play, then technically it's cheating, and technically they deserve to get the title vacated or handed down to the next best team. So, it's whatever. There's whatever. I think
let's look at this. Let's look at this from multiple angles here, and I'm gonna try to put you in the shoes of a few different people. Okay, you're Jackie Robinson, Little League. You won the U.S. title, by whatever means necessary that you needed to, bringing players, et cetera, et cetera. You won the U.S. title. You lost, in the Little League World Series, the international series, but you have a title from the U.S. You beat, you're the best team in Little League, baseball for 2014. You can't take, to quote Matt West, who he likes to say this a lot, which I actually think it's a great quote. You can't take, no matter how much you strip a title, you can't take the memory of me winning a title away, and you can't take the memory from the fan of that team, Jackie Robinson Little League, winning a title. So when we look back here 10 years, you're not going to show highlights of the Las Vegas Little League beating Jackie Robinson. You're going to show Jackie Robinson beating the Las Vegas Little League team. And that's something that you can't take away from the minds of sports fans, especially Little League baseball sports fans, who are always going to remember that. Now, take the flip side, and I'm the Las Vegas Little League team, and I lost to Jackie Robinson Little League. It happens. Somebody's got to lose. But now all of a sudden, what are we, 6 months later, we're looking at now all of a sudden we're being awarded the title of U.S. champion, which the reward for being the U.S. champion is to play in the International World Series. Well, as Las Vegas, Little League, we didn't get to do that either. And who knows, we may have beaten the representative. I think it was South Korea, or it may have been Taiwan. I'm not 100% sure on that. I have to get the crack research staff to tell me about that. But the fact of the matter is you don't have the memories of winning either the U.S. title or the International World Series representative appearance. So I ask you to go into both of those people's shoes. What does it really mean to strip Jackie Robinson Little League of a title and give it to the Las Vegas Little League? I don't understand how you're really making anybody happy in this situation. I understand justice needs to be served, but what are you really accomplishing by doing these, by stripping them of this title and awarding these and other titles to the leagues that actually lost to Jackie Robinson Little League?
I think that, putting somebody in the shoes of the Illinois team that got stripped is a good take. But I think a phenomenal take is to put yourself in the shoes of the Las Vegas team that was awarded the championship and like you said, did not get to test their stripes in the International Little League World Series. I think maybe a better play by the Little League World Series committee would be to just vacate the title, because it really is not fair if you award a team the United States Little League World Series champion and they don't get to play for the ultimate championship. And so it's kind of like a paper championship, basically.
Right. And that's the thing. If I'm Jackie Robinson, if I'm the Las Vegas Little League team, do I petition to potentially play South Korea in the international series? Do I petition to, attempt to maybe replay a U.S. championship game with the team that lost to Jackie Robinson in the semifinals? What do I do here? Now I have a trophy or an award that I necessarily didn't receive. On the field, I didn't, achieve what was needed to receive this award. Now I understand that the team I played who defeated me wasn't supposed to be there, but come on, we're talking about, the same situations as Reggie Bush, losing the Heisman and USC being stripped of a national championship. You know what? because Reggie Bush received benefits that weren't on the field, now you're going to tell me that USC's championship and their Heisman Trophy don't exist anymore? No, you can't take that memory away from me. I saw the game. I saw when, Reggie Bush and them won the title. I saw when he won the Heisman. I saw when Jackie Robinson defeated Las Vegas's Little League team out here. You can't, I just don't understand what benefit you do by awarding the titles. I agree with you 100%. Just vacating the title, putting an asterisk next to it. So when people are looking it up on Wikipedia or any other sites to look back at series past, they see that this was the situation and Jackie Robinson Little League was the champions. However, their wins were vacated due to violations of gerrymandering as far as districts and everything. But this is the kind of thing we see a lot that's really not talked about at the high school level. As far as, I don't know about when you were playing football, but when I was playing football in high school, we had a couple of kids on our team that definitely weren't from the school district that was designated to my high school, and we were a quality high school team based on these guys. A couple of them are in the NFL right now.
Yeah, and I could speak to high school football here in Florida, and I know that's a rampant problem. And I just want to, I want to distinguish this Little League World Series thing from, ideally I would love to see the title vacated because of the situation that we obviously laid out. They don't get to play for the ultimate championship. And Reggie Bush, I don't think they award. I think they just vacated the Heisman and put an asterisk, and which was completely fair because, like you said, he broke rules that were off the field. However, when it's a tricky situation because you vacate the title because these rules affected on the field play, basically in the Little League World Series. So is that grounds to vacate the title, or should you award it to the team that should have won or possibly would have more of a chance to win if they follow the rules?
Right, and that's my point. You're not awarding the Heisman to the guy who finished in second place, and you're not awarding the national championship to the team, I think it was Oklahoma, that lost the title game because Reggie Bush was on the field.
Right, and I think the thing is, Reggie Bush, obviously he took benefits that did not affect his on the field play. So can you award it to the next best guy because it didn't affect the outcome, basically? In the Little League World Series, the outcome possibly and probably was affected by the rule breaking. But maybe we need to get Matt West or Mike Sirocco to write a letter to the Little League World Series to get a real championship game going here.
Yeah, we get a nice little lawyer, get some signatures behind it. We may have a petition on our hands. You heard it here first. This is the Sport Buffet on the Aristocrat Sportsnet. We are broadcasting to you live, courtesy of my good friend John Sirocco, the owner of Aristocrat Sportsnet. Once again, Sport Buffet is definitely proud to be a part of this show. And we're definitely having a good time here on the Aristocrat Sportsnet. Check us out, aristocratsportsnet.com. Also, check out the Sport Buffet website at www.thesportbuffet.com. Let's wrap this up with the Little League World Series controversy, and to attest that last point. Yes, those players who were brought in from other districts would not be on that team, and yes, quite possibly the Las Vegas Little League could have defeated Jackie Robinson Little League. Because, watching this, especially with the buzz that was surrounding Las Vegas, we definitely tuned in, and Las Vegas was running through teams. And so that leads me to, when a team is that much more head and shoulders above its counterparts that are supposed to be the same age, which I'm not accusing Las Vegas Little League of anything. What I'm saying is basically, does this basically extend down this concept of quote unquote cheating? I hate that word because I think it's really more stretching rules than cheating. Cheating is so black and white.
Let's eliminate your New England Patriots.
No. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about a black and white. You cheated, you didn't cheat. Bringing in kids to play in a Little League. I know when I was in actual Little League, we didn't have districts as far as where you could live. So maybe that's changed from the time that I've grown up, because I know in Little League we had guys, I lived in the Tampa Bay area, and we had guys from all over Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is a big city, and just as Chicago's a big city. I really don't think if you can, and I'm of the belief it's kind of almost like the school choice system. If you can get your kid to that specific Little League, or you can get your kid to, that specific school, I don't see a problem why you shouldn't be able to play in that Little League or go to that school. I think that the fact that we have a Little League World Series with all the AAU and all of that travel baseball and all the competitive baseball, the fact that we still have a Little League World Series, in my opinion, is still pretty damn impressive, because I feel like the little leagues that I used to play in are so obsolete now with the invention and the institution of this travel ball, this AAU, where park ball has basically become a thing of the past. So, I mean, to basically put a black eye on your entity that's already kind of struggling to keep players in the environment, I really think that that's really tough to come back from, so to speak.
Okay, I certainly agree with you, and like I said, when I first read the news, I was expecting, kids that were a couple of years older.
Sure, of course, you had the Danny Almonte conspiracy
right.
back, what was that, about 10 years ago, sometime.
And when I, read the entire situation, read the entire article, I obviously felt it was a lot less severe than I anticipated, and but it goes back to, if you play any type of sport, if you break the rules, you get penalized. And these little league teams and these districts and the people that organize these teams, they know the rules that they have to abide by. And if they blatantly break the rules, even if, I think the rule might be bad, okay, and Little League World Series might have to review the rule, maybe not. But if you blatantly break a rule that you're supposed to be following and you get caught, you deserve to be penalized, basically.
Sure, and I can respect that, and that's irregardless of fanhood. I can respect breaking a rule. If you're to be found guilty, then yes, you should suffer some consequences, and I totally wholeheartedly agree. My thought is, you got 12-year-old kids, allegedly. We'll see how old they really are when more evidence comes out, but you got 10 to 12-year-old kids who are playing baseball, a game they love. They're a little sheltered from the world in terms of what really goes on, especially in a world like, in a city like Chicago. That's, we're not going to dive into the politics of that, but there's a lot of, definitely a lot of necessary upkeep needed to that city. But you got these kids who, they just want to play baseball, and they don't know that. They may know, but I highly doubt that they know that rules are being broken, and to bring, these kids in. And, this is a parents thing. This is where, adults corrupt Little League baseball, and you always talk about the dads who are a little bit way too in to coaching or yelling at their kids. But if I'm the Little League World Series, I'm just going to ask the Little League World Series, whoever represents them, to just allow these kids from Jackie Robinson to just keep the medals or the trophies that they were given. I mean, at least give them that. You may, in a real world, in a to everybody else, their titles may be stripped, but these kids, regardless of whether or not their play off the play off the field was foul, that wasn't anything they had to do with it. So I think that let the kids keep a trophy. I really hope that the Little League World Series doesn't go in and take their medal or trophy or whatever they were awarded. They may not be able to prove it in a search. Like, hey, I won the Little League World Series, U.S. champion. Obviously it's vacated, whatever. But let them have it. Let them have their moment. Kids are growing up way too fast, and having something like this, keeping you, happy as a kid, keeping you still a little bit of shelter to you. I think the Little League World Series could do the right thing by maybe, not going in there and taking the awards away from the kids.
One can only imagine that they would be sensitive to that. They know they're dealing with 10 to 12-year-old kids, and what an average person would figure something out, maybe get a couple new medals and awards. But the most important thing is, if the kids from Chicago, they have the memory at the very least of what they did on the field together. And I think it all boils down to, it's maybe a bad rule and something that maybe needs to be looked at. But, you're clearly Mr. Vegas Homer, and I love that.
Well, they were a good story here back in the Little League World Series. It's nice to have a team that you can follow, especially when you don't have any professional sports franchises. It's nice when somebody in this area actually achieves a little bit of success. And looking at that, I don't think you can award any medals to these kids who are in Las Vegas, because I still think there has to be the competition factor. Hey, you played on the field regardless of what the status was of these kids. You weren't successful, and I think even though we've deemed these kids ineligible, you should not be awarded a medal, or if you want to award them the overall U.S. champion trophy, that's fine. I get it. Okay, that's the rules are rules, and that's what the rule says. It needs to be handed down to the next team. But don't award these kids trophies. I mean, I may be sounding harsh in that sentiment, but don't award them trophies. They really didn't achieve what the goal was or what that award represents. They didn't achieve what that trophy stands for.
I completely agree. And then, we started the show with the news of Tarkanian, kind of transitioned to the Little League World Series coming, the Vegas team. I want to keep the theme going because, for viewers that are not aware, Aaron Crouch is a premier handicapper in Las Vegas. He handicaps for RANC Sports, handicapping, professional handicapping service. The company, Aaron Crouch, picked, I think he gave out 5 free picks in the last 5 days. I think they went 4-1. So basically here on the aristocratsportsnet.com and the sportbuffet.com, you're getting free money. I really, really hope you're taking advantage of this.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely. I'm on a little bit of a hot streak, and we'd like to keep it going. Yes, the company is Rank Sports, and we do have some of the world's best handicappers here, like right in the Las Vegas area, and we have a few handicappers around the U.S. as well. Guys who make a little money on their picks would like you to make a little money on their picks as well. Definitely, we got an awesome staff, and we got some great insight in some sports writing. We got some sports writers lined up to write for the site, and it's coming along great. And I appreciate your positive energy toward that.
Well, you can't really argue with free money. I know you're at an 80% clip in the last week, so I'm definitely going to be riding that wave until it dies, if it ever dies. But that's very questionable, knowing where the picks are coming from. And I do want to remind our viewers and listeners, if you're listening on aristocratsportsnet.com, there's a comment box right below where you watch us, and we always welcome comments, and they will be read on the air. If we so feel, unless you're talking trash, maybe it won't get read. But I just want you to know that there is a comment box, please. And some people have utilized it, and I really appreciate that. I know Aaron would appreciate it if you left some comments for him, give him a little feedback. But yeah, I'm going to turn it back over to AC.
Well, to make mention of what you're talking about with, me on a nice little hot streak, I like to say that we're profitable. That's the key word in sports betting is profitable. And you're not going to win every bet you bet, and you're not going to hit every spread. You're not going to hit every total, but it's nice to go on those winning streaks. And I like to think right now I'm balling a little bit. And hey, speaking of balling, first half the NBA is over. What are your thoughts?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you said.
I said, speaking of balling, which I'm doing right now with my sports picks, the first half of the NBA season has, I think it officially closes tonight before All-Star Weekend, or maybe it closed last night. I don't follow the NBA in great detail, but what are your thoughts on the first half of this NBA season? Ups, downs,
And I think the first half of the NBA was as good as I anticipated. I love the NBA. My main thing is I love that the top 2 teams in the NBA right now are young. They have great coaches, young coaches, and they're so much fun to watch. And you got one in the West and one in the East. And if the story plays out, it could make for a very interesting end to the season. But the first half played out very lovely, to put it.
Are there any? Who was your surprise team? I know the Hawks are, have only got 10 losses, and they put together a great streak. They play great team basketball. But is that your surprise team of the year so far in the NBA, or is there another team that has caught your eye?
It's hard to say the Hawks are not anybody's surprise team at this point, but I that's the obvious choice. So I'm gonna throw out another team out there who's a little surprising and very much under the radar, and that is the Toronto Raptors. They are cleaning up. They're taking care of business. They are completely dominating the division they play in. Not that says much, but they're a team that nobody's talking about. They have a good, young, core talent there, and they are definitely a player in the Eastern Conference when it comes to playoff time.
Yeah, no doubt. They definitely they kind of grew last year in the playoffs, unfortunately losing to the Nets, but they've kind of turned over that success last season and parlayed it into this season. And you're right, the Toronto Raptors are definitely an inspiration, especially when you get more coverage of Drake on the sidelines. But let's look at it. Let's look at it this way, in a stance of the West is all for probably the last 10, 15 years has been stacked. And the East has been, let's say, a little lackluster after you get past maybe the 5 seed. Do you feel that the teams in the East, at the top of the East, can compete with, these guys in the West? Say, look at Oklahoma City Thunder. Probably, on any given night is one of the best teams in the league, but they're the 9 seed right now. I mean, if the season ended today, they would miss the playoffs. Do you think that teams in the East could compete with even some of the lower seeded teams in the West?
I think for sure that's a great point when it comes to the bottom half of the West, playoff teams at least. I think the bottom half, maybe like 5 through 9 seed or something like that, would all be playoff if they play in the East. However, just looking at a team like Atlanta, their record against, I think, Western Conference current playoff teams right now is 9-1. So, I know Atlanta's got the best record in the NBA, but they obviously would be able to compete in the West and compete at a very high level.
Sure. I mean, obviously the records are a little skewed because, like you said, Atlanta is 9-1 in the West. However, the majority of their schedule is against the East. And looking at the standings in the East, you got teams that are, 6 games under 500 making playoff spots. And I know we've said this for years, and we talked about it on yesterday's podcast or yesterday's show on the Sport Buffet. You can check that out on thesportbuffet.com. The podcast is up from yesterday in case you missed the show. But, I don't know. I'm just always of the belief that the 16 best teams should make it in any sport. And, I'm starting to come off of that in the NFL a little bit because of the parity and because of the toughness from game to game and only spread out over a 16-game schedule. Every game is such an important barometer of your team. But over 82 games, if you're under 500, I mean, come on. I mean, we're looking at the 7 seed in the East, 22 and 29. I mean, you're 7 games under 500, and you're going to make a playoff if the season ended today. I mean, I look at the West and I'm looking at the 9 and 10 seed, who are both 2 games over 500, which, I don't know. Maybe I'm of the belief that I like the best competition to be rewarded for their efforts in the season. And I'm also of the belief that I think that, the regular season needs to come back and matter now.
I certainly understand and respect the argument. I think I'm more of a traditionalist because if you alter, if you go with Adam Silver's playoff reseeding scenario or whatever, where the 6 division winners would be granted playoff spots and then the 10 best teams regardless of their conference. We would have to do an entire makeover and rehaul everything, in terms of schedule, because like you said, the Eastern Conference teams play a majority of their games against Eastern Conference teams. Western Conference teams play a majority of their games against Western Conference teams. I think that would destroy built-in rivalry, because you would be obviously getting less of what that is. And to the casual fan, that might not matter, but to hardcore basketball fans, that would certainly do something. I think I wouldn't even touch it. I would leave it the way it is. The NBA playoffs are always so exciting, regardless of who's playing. I'm just, like I said, more of a traditionalist, and I'd leave it the way it is.
All right. Well, that's a topic we can get into later on in the NBA season. Let's switch and give me your first half. Give me John Sirocco's first half MVP of the NBA.
Yeah, it is. It's like a 3-way tie, and that was the most surprising thing of the first half of the NBA season, was that there's no clear-cut front runner for the MVP race. Usually there's a guy that's having a magical season, and it's a no-brainer who's going to win the MVP. But right now, you got James Harden, Anthony Davis, and Steph Curry, and I think all 3 of them have a legitimate chance to win the MVP race. And I think the second half of the season is going to be the deciding factor when it comes to that.
Now, do you think that's good for the league? I mean, we're talking about the NBA here, and my knowledge of the NBA is on a very, very basic level. But to my knowledge, I believe that the last 5 or 6 MVPs have either been LeBron James, Derrick Rose, or Kevin Durant. So, in your opinion, is this well, 2 parts? Is the fact that LeBron James, in your opinion, Kevin Durant, in your opinion, and Derrick Rose aren't, really front runners for the NBA, and the fact that 3 guys from teams who aren't as common, and 3 guys who are, we can call them superstars, but they're not, they're not quite at that LeBron James level. Is it good for the league that guys like this, that we can kind of have parity in the NBA MVP race, in a sense like that, in your opinion? Do you think that's beneficial for the league?
Yes, absolutely. And, like the kingpins, I guess you can call them, with LeBron and Derrick Rose and Kevin Durant. When it comes to the MVP race, Derrick Rose has been kind of irrelevant for the last 2 seasons, obviously because of his injuries. Kevin Durant is still a beast and one of the top 2 or 3 players in the league. He's just been riddled by injuries this year. And LeBron is kind of, he's been more of taking maybe a little lesser role. I don't know what it is, but in Cleveland, he's just obviously not having an MVP type season. But
yeah, you look at LeBron in Cleveland. I sorry to interrupt you here, but I look at LeBron in Cleveland, and I mean, I'm always of the opinion that the MVP really means most valuable player, not most outstanding player. And I look at a team like Cleveland. I look at what happened to Cleveland when LeBron was out. I believe they were 1-9. And you look at what happened when LeBron came back, they got everything. He's almost like a coach on the floor, which, not almost, he is a coach on the floor. Let's put it this way. He's the Peyton Manning, basically, of NBA. He is probably calling plays on the floor. He's probably disregarding anything that Blatt says, with a little bit of respect. But when he came back, I believe they're 14 of 15 in the win column when he came back from that injury. I mean, so if you're talking about most valuable to your team, I mean, LeBron may not be putting up 30 a night like Harden and like Kevin Durant's capable of doing. But I mean, God, when you talk about the valuable, nature of a player, I mean, that screams LeBron James right there. I mean, 1-9 when he's out, 14 of 15 when he's in. I mean, I'm of the belief that valuable is basically being portrayed by LeBron James this year, more so than any of his other MVPs.
That's a very, very good argument, and you can just translate that back to the Miami Heat. Look at the Miami Heat team that is pretty much the same, except LeBron James, and how bad they're struggling right now with LeBron. And it's the same thing in Cleveland. When LeBron's on the court, they're completely different basketball team than when he's not on the court. But going back to the question, do I think it's good for the NBA that you have guys like Steph Curry, James Harden, Anthony Davis taking the lead, basically, at least in the eyes of the media, and in my eyes, for the leading MVP candidate. I think it's awesome that you have young guys like this, Steph Curry and Anthony Davis. I mean, they're going to be tremendous players for at least the next 10 years in the NBA.
Sure, absolutely.
James Harden, go ahead.
No, I was agreeing with you. Absolutely. I think now let's talk about the Brow for a second. Can he win the MVP if he stays on this pace, but the Pelicans miss the playoffs?
No, I don't think he can. Because you have, the guys that he's battling with, Steph Curry and James Harden, that, they're definitely players on 2 definite playoff teams in the Western Conference. And I think it's a hard sell to give an award like that to Anthony Davis if his team fails to make the playoffs.
All right. And, part of me agrees with that. And I think that with his injury coming up, I don't know how long he's out for. I don't know if he's even come back. I know he was due to be out for a little period of time. Let's see what the Pelicans, where they go going forward here in the next couple of weeks with or without Anthony Davis. Now let's look at James Harden. The guy's a point machine, and he's improved his defense. Let's say a little bit this year. He's not anything to write home about as far as Defensive Player of the Year, which guys like Kobe, LeBron, other MVPs, Michael Jordan, were definitely not just resting on their offensive laurels. Can James Harden really be an MVP in this league if you're really not a full, all-around, multi-purpose player in the NBA?
Well, James Harden's definitely Harden's definitely not going to be any members of any NBA All Defensive team anytime soon. That's for sure. And I think that's a huge part of it. If I'm casting my vote, I think that plays a lot into it. You go back to the old MVP, winners like Kobe and Michael, and you name them. They were all top-notch defensive players as well as top-notch offensive players. And you can kind of throw Steph Curry in that mix too, because he's not very much known for his defense either.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's they got the Splash Brothers, but they're definitely not nicknamed for their defense. So I mean, let's take Steph Curry. Steph Curry has one of the most amazing shots I've ever seen in the games that I watch and the highlights that I watch. But, with that team is very cohesive as a unit. You got, like I said, the Splash Brothers, Klay Thompson. I mean, with an outrageous 37-point quarter. So it's not like they have slouches on their team. I think that if I had to give a nod, if I'm going to have to vote for one of those two with James Harden and Steph Curry, I almost feel like Harden's a lot more valuable to his team. But maybe there's something I'm not seeing with Steph Curry as far as leadership, as far as intensity, as far as keeping that cohesive unit from getting way too ahead of themselves, because they are a good team. But remember, they haven't achieved anything yet. So maybe I'm missing something that you might know about Steph Curry that would lean me more towards voting for him as an MVP versus James Harden, who can simply, pour 40 in on any night. And he's basically carrying the team without Dwight Howard.
Not that Dwight Howard's going to help very much anyway at this point. I mean, the transformation of Dwight Howard since his NBA Finals days in Orlando compared to what he's been through since then it's absolutely astonishing to me. Back in the day, I thought Dwight Howard was going to be one of the all-time great big men the NBA has ever seen. Obviously, that didn't happen. But James Harden, I'm going to say right now that Steph Curry plays with very much a fierce tenacity. He definitely gets in your face. He's not afraid to take any shot, obviously, and he might be the best shooter I've ever seen in my entire life, from all the way from college basketball to today. He's, in my opinion, no doubt the best shooter in the NBA, and Klay Thompson's probably number 2 shooter in the NBA. But James Harden, man, say what you want about his lack of defensive ability. This guy goes and gets rebounds. He goes and gets he dishes the ball out as well as obviously score the ball. He's leading the NBA in scoring. Right now, it's hard, man. It's definitely a hard thing, but I think James Harden probably right now would be ahead of Steph Curry in the MVP race if you had to vote today.
Well, yeah, and that's the good thing about the NBA, like you said, this season with the number of players that could potentially walk away with the MVP title. It's nice to not have a clear-cut MVP by the All-Star break. And I think that that's good for the league, and I think that that's something that they can play up on. However, touching back on your Dwight Howard point, I do have to disagree a little bit, as far as his contributions. I understand that he's not the player he was in Orlando, and, back surgeries, et cetera, and a little bit of his attitude have played into that. However, when you have a 6'10", 6'11", 7-foot beast in the middle, as far as body mass, it really diverts a lot of teams' game plans, a lot of teams' offenses, a lot of teams' strategy. I don't care what you say. I mean, you look at teams like Washington, who has an average big man in Marcin Gortat. You have to game plan around that guy. You look at teams with not a big man who's a 6'11", 7-foot presence in the middle that can block shots, maybe not give you as much on the offensive stat sheet as you'd like, but rebounding and block shots are pretty much a center's recipe for success in the league. And I think that Dwight Howard can still do both of those if he's not putting in 25 points a game. His shot is definitely diminished, but I think that the Rockets definitely need Dwight Howard if they're going to do anything in the playoffs. And I think that if Dwight Howard can come back, be healthy, and accept a role, and that's the key, is accepting a role. And Kevin McHale really has to drive that into Dwight Howard. I understand he makes $20 some odd million a year, and you're paid like a superstar, and you're paid like one of the number 1 players in the NBA. But you know what? Sometimes the financials don't matter. Take a look at Rashard Lewis in Orlando when they made a finals run. He had to accept a role as becoming basically an outside spot shooter, picking up rebounds and playing great defense when it mattered. And that guy has a max contract at that point in time. So I think Dwight Howard really needs to get his ego in check, because if he can do that and come back and become a defensive specialist and a big time rebounder, especially an offensive rebounder, I think that only would seal the fate of James Harden as the MVP in this league.
And Dwight Howard, no disrespect, he's in my opinion a top 6 or 7, 8, or whatever it is, big man in the league. But to me, my point was Dwight Howard in 2009 is a completely different animal than Dwight Howard in 2015, whatever we're in now. Like you said, a 6'10" guy that can rebound and block. Yeah, obviously you have to game plan around that guy. The guy has an effect on the game, but what distinguishes him from another top big man? It's just not there at this point.
Well, no, I'm not talking about him being distinguished amongst the upper echelon of big men. I'm just talking about him doing his job, becoming a role player. I'm asking him to basically become the Kyle Korver of the paint, become a player who that on any given night may only give you 12 points a game, but he's going to give you 6 or 7 offensive rebounds. He's going to give you 14 rebounds, and he might block 3 or 4 shots a game. I mean, if you're talking about averaging 12 and 10 or 12 and 12 with 4 or 5 blocks a game, I mean, that's what you need. I mean, that's what Anthony Davis does, but he pours in 13 more points a game. I mean, we're talking about a guy who can mirror Anthony Davis. Dwight Howard has to get his ego in check, and that's where I'm kind of calling him out, because we all saw Dwight in Orlando and the immaturity. But 6 years later from that finals run, 6 years later, I don't think he's learned a damn thing.
I would certainly agree with you on that, and I think it's quite obvious that Dwight Howard's problem is it's the mental aspect of everything. So the first time in his career, well, I want to say for the second time, because in LA, he had to deal with the Kobe Bryant factor, but he's second fiddle on this basketball team. And growing up, Dwight Howard is he's mid to late 20s at this point, maybe 30, and he's his entire life he's been the focal point of any team or anything that he's ever done. And that's just it's got to be a new sensation for him over these last 2 or 3 years.
Right. And that's exactly what, we're saying as far as egos. You got to get it in check. You got to take a page out of the Spurs playbook. Hell, you got to take a page out of the Atlanta Hawks playbook. If you want to have success in this league and you want to chase that title, which when you were in Orlando, that's all that you said that mattered before you left. If you want to chase that title, then you have to learn to play as a team.
Completely agree. And
so if let's we're running short on time. Let me ask you in a real quick 1-word statement. If you had your MVP vote and you had to make it today, give me one name.
Today, I would go just out of bias. I'm going Stephen Curry.
All right, well there you have it, John Sirocco.
What about you? Who's Aaron Crouch's AC's MVP vote going to?
I'm gonna have to piggyback on yours, because the amount of basketball that I watch really pairs into comparison to the amount of late night with Jimmy Fallon. Let's just put it that way. I have more interest in late night talk shows than I do in the NBA, and I've made that known on several occasions. But I still like to keep up with it. I still like to follow it. You're not going to find me watching too many games, but I get how the NBA works. So I would say Steph Curry. I mean, honestly, actually, I'm going to say LeBron James is the MVP as far as most valuable player to a team. LeBron James this year epitomizes it more than any other year in the past.
And you certainly laid out a sellable argument to that a few minutes ago, and I can't really knock you for it. I totally understand the argument, and hopefully I'll be correct at the end of the year, and you won't be.
Well, I will tell you the most outstanding player in my mind, from what I do watch. Yeah, you got to look at Steph Curry. He's fun to watch, and he's probably one of the most outstanding players in this league. And the NBA is lucky they got him. Without injury, they got him for at least 10 to 15 more years, and they got to be excited about that.
Yes, and I just want to close the Steph Curry thing. He was a tremendous player, obviously, up until this year. But this year, with Steve Kerr coaching him, Steve Kerr is one of the premier shooters the NBA has ever seen. And I think it's just added that much more dimension to Steph Curry's game. And I feel like he's an unstoppable monster right now.
Absolutely, yeah. It's nice to have nice things. Well, let's touch base here. We got about 3 or 4 minutes. I wanted to talk about everybody's favorite subject, the NFL, and sliding down draft boards, according to many of the talking heads, is Marcus Mariota, who, not too long ago was looking like the Bucs' #1 pick, clear cut, and then all of a sudden Jameis Winston, became, in the mix, despite his character issues. What do you see? What are people seeing about Mariota? That are they just looking at the past, with Joey Harrington, Achilles Smith, and they're just basically dooming Mariota from the start before he even, throws an NFL pass? What's going on with Mariota that we just keep sliding him down and down?
Well, that is more of a national phenomenon, I think, because I live here in Tampa, and the Bucs obviously have the number one pick in the draft. So there's a lot of Mariota talk going on down here, and like the local, at least amongst the media and the fans that I'm hearing, is he's still very much in play. Winston right now, I guess, he's probably more people's pick for the number one pick, but Mariota, you know what? I think it's very premature. You haven't had any combines or any workouts right now, and it's just people with no NFL going on right now. I think it's you have nothing else to talk about, and I mean, for some reason, I don't know why people are criticizing Mariota's game over Winston, especially based on their head-to-head performance. So, I'm kind of speechless when it comes to that.
Do you think that he can be a successful quarterback in Lovie Smith's system, or whoever that offensive coordinator is down in Tampa? I know that Tedford's gone. I don't know exactly who the offensive coordinator. Do you think that Mariota can be successful in a system that's not tailored to him, like Chip Kelly in Philadelphia, or do you think that the streak continues? Joey Harrington, Achilles Smith, Dennis Dixon. We see every single guy come out of Oregon and just cannot translate to the NFL from a quarterback standpoint. What are your thoughts, from what you've watched on Mariota, if you had to put your scout hat on?
And I've seen a lot of Mariota. I think it's a different analysis. I think it's a different ball game because, obviously he's a different type of quarterback than Joey Harrington was coming out of Oregon. There's some similarities in Mariota's game as there was in Dixon's game. However, when Dixon was coming up, and the NFL is so different than how offenses are run. The spread and the option offenses are very prevalent as opposed to when Dennis Dixon was coming in the NFL. It was kind of a foreign thing. So I think Mariota's a better prospect than Dennis Dixon was. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And seeing the success of, I hate to do it, but I kind of compare his game to Russell Wilson. Maybe Russell Wilson, obviously what puts him over the top is his football smarts and his ability to think quickly on his feet and just make stuff happen on the football field. That kind of stuff is you can't teach it. You obviously have to develop it on your own. But if I were the Bucs, honestly, I would. I'm more of a fan of Mariota than Jameis Winston, honestly.
Okay. Now let me ask you this. Now take off your scouting hat and put on your fan hat. We got about 45 seconds here until the end of the broadcast. Put on your fan hat, and for entertainment purposes, would you rather see either one or both of these quarterbacks, meaning Mariota and Winston, have one of those Aaron Rodgers, Brady Quinn tumbles, or do you just want to see him go off the board very early and be intrigued by what the rest of this draft has to offer?
Yeah, I want to see him come off early. I think both guys had tremendous careers, and honestly, I don't think either of them will last past like the 5th or 6th pick anyway.
Right. Gotcha. Well, John, I appreciate you coming on the show on such short notice. Once again, this is the Sport Buffet. We are on Aristocrat Sportsnet. I am with John Sirocco, CEO of Aristocrat Sportsnet. And I got to say, once again, I am very excited to be a part of this operation. And I know that you've got big things in store, and I just hope we can jump on the train while it's taken out of the station.
Aaron, it's certainly a privilege to be able to carry the Sport Buffet on the Aristocrat Sportsnet. So, you guys are going to carry us to big things, hopefully, and I definitely have faith in you guys. And like I said before, it's a privilege to be on your show. Thank you so much. Had an awesome time, and definitely be listening to. I think we're broadcasting again tomorrow. Hopefully, we'll definitely let you know. Stay tuned on Twitter and Facebook. Like us and follow us, and we'll see you again on aristocratsportsnet.com.
All right, this has been the Sport Buffet on the Sport Buffet Radio Network, broadcasting on Aristocrat Sports, brought to you by Rank Sports, your number one source for sports handicapping. Once again, for John Sirocco, I am Aaron the Iceman. It has been a pleasure talking sports with you today. Have a great evening.